I get it. You're scrolling through a ton of home gym options, wondering if that pricey piece of equipment will actually get you the shoulder and chest work you need without turning your garage into a warehouse. You've probably imagined yourself setting up the machine, doing a few sets, and then realizing it either takes too much space, feels awkward, or just doesn't hit the muscles the way you hoped. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Before you drop a few $100s on something that might sit unused, let's walk through what the PEC rear delt fly machine actually offers, who finds it worth every penny, and who would be better off looking elsewhere. First off, the biggest question most people have is whether a single machine can realistically replace a couple of dumbbells, a bench, and maybe a cable crossover. The PEC deck is marketed as a 2-in-1 dual-function unit, meaning you can switch between chest flies and rear delt flies with just a handle adjustment. In a typical home gym scenario, that's a huge convenience factor. You only need to clear one footprint, you only have to learn one movement pattern, and you can flip between pushing and pulling motions without crawling around the room. For anyone who's juggling a limited space, think a basement that also holds a treadmill and a squat rack. That compact footprint can be a real game changer. The machine's construction is what the manufacturer calls commercial grade, and that shows up in the way the frame feels when you sit down and start loading the weight stack. The 220-pound counterweight gives you enough resistance for most intermediate users, and the smooth, single cable system means you won't hear the clunk of plates shifting around. I've seen people who regularly train with 200-plus-pound dumbbell flies say the stack feels solid enough to push them into progressive overload without the plate handling hassle. If you're already comfortable loading plates, the machine might feel a little less free, but the consistent resistance can actually help you nail the exact range of motion you're after, especially on the rear deltoid work where form is critical. Now, let's talk about the practical side of setting it up. The unit arrives partially assembled, which is typical for a piece this size, and you'll need a couple of minutes, a screwdriver, and maybe a friend to help lift the base onto the floor. Once it's upright, the seat and handles slide on tracks that lock into place. The adjustments are pretty intuitive. Move the seat forward or back until your elbows line up with the pivot points, and you'll feel a natural lock-in when you press the release lever. The real benefit here is that you can dial in a fit for a wide range of body types. Tall users just push the seat farther back, shorter users keep it forward. The downside is that the seat cushion isn't thick, so if you're planning long sets or multiple exercises back-to-back, you might want to add a thin gym mat for extra padding. When it comes to daily usability, the machine shines in a few specific scenarios. If you're a serious lifter who wants to isolate the rear delts without worrying about shoulder impingement, the biomechanically optimized movement path on this deck really helps. The handles guide your arms in a plane that keeps the rotator cuff safe, which is something you can't guarantee with free weight flies unless you're meticulous about form. For chest work, the same guided path can be a blessing for those who have struggled to keep their elbows from flaring out and ending up with shoulder strain. I've seen home gym owners incorporate the chest flies into a push-day routine, using the machine for the final burnout set after bench presses, and the consistent resistance makes the burnout feel controlled rather than chaotic. However, there are hidden trade-offs that become apparent after a few weeks of use. Because the movement is fixed, you lose the ability to tweak the angle of the flies beyond what the seat adjustment allows. That means you can't easily target the upper versus middle chest the way you could with an adjustable cable pulley that moves in 3 dimensions. If you're a bodybuilder looking for that fine-tuned chest sculpting, you might find the machine a bit limiting after the novelty wears off. Also, the weight stack increments are in 10-pound jumps, which is fine for most users but can be a snag if you're a beginner who wants to start at a very light resistance and progress gradually. You'll end up either loading the lowest weight and feeling like you're not challenging yourself, or jumping to a level that feels too heavy to maintain proper form. Another practical consideration is the noise factor. The counterweight system is quieter than a plate-loaded machine, but the cable does make a faint whir when you move through the full range. In an apartment building or a shared garage, that's usually manageable, but it's worth mentioning if you're hypersensitive to any gym noise. Also, the footprint, while small compared to a full cable tower, still requires a clear rectangle of